Our next two speakers bring the international flair to this issue, and we are so fortunate that right here in Atlanta, right around the corner, we have both the King Center and the Carter Center. So I would like to welcome up first Karin Ryan, who is with the Carter Center and works with human rights, and then Bernice King, the CEO of the King Center. So please give a round of applause to these amazing women and the work that they're doing.
Thank you, Allison. How about for Allison? Hi, everyone. We're almost to the end. You have been a fantastic audience. It's been fun to sit here with you. Really exciting. I want to ask, is violence a spiritual disease? If violence is a spiritual disease, does it have a spiritual remedy? I want to tell you a few stories of people who have realized this and have decided to use their voice in order to bring the spiritual remedy to the disease of violence. The first person I want to tell you about is my boss, who I've had the honor to work with for 25 years, Jimmy Carter, and his wife, Rosalind Carter. So around the year 2000, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter made a decision to leave what they had been part of for their entire lives, the Southern Baptist Convention, an umbrella organization for the Baptist churches of the South. Why did they do that? Because the Southern Baptist Convention had ruled that women could no longer be leaders in their churches, that women would need to be subservient to their husbands, and that women could no longer teach boys. This was very offensive to them. It was very heartbreaking for them. And they decided to leave the Southern Baptist Convention and begin a new umbrella organization for churches, Baptist churches, that saw a different vision of the message of Jesus, of love, compassion, and inclusion and equality. This was a very painful decision, but it led him to become thoughtful about the role that religion must play, and he began studying and learning about the deprivations of women's rights and girls' rights around the world. So after this, we held the most amazing conversation and conference at the Carter Center. And I want to tell you about a few people who came to testify about what they're doing. Because violence is a spiritual disease, we must have a spiritual remedy. But it is also a political disease, and we must have a political remedy. I want to tell you about Miriam Bemba, who in her village in Senegal wept because her daughter was taken to be cut in a traditional practice of genital cutting. She was taken to be cut, and there was bleeding, and there was crying, and there was pain, and there was suffering. And she said to one of her sisters, why must we continue this practice? She had heard that there was some international agreement that said that this practice was not right, that it was a violation of something called human rights. And so they started speaking together, and they went to their village imam, and they said, we want to end this practice of cutting our girls' genitals. The imam said, but if I just say no more in this village, our girls can't intermarry with all the villages around us. So what we must do is we must go and persuade every imam in every village. He said, I had to put on some shoes, some really strong, brand new, not too new, but new shoes that would take me to all 128 villages so that every imam would together join us. And they had 128 villages collectively abandon genital cutting. But it didn't stop there. It didn't stop there. This one conversation, this one spark in this one woman and this one vision of a spiritual religious leader, the imam. He said, the Quran does not teach this. The Quran does not mandate this. That act of leadership and courage, those acts of leadership and courage have led to over 6,000 villages throughout West Africa and now Somalia to abandon genital cutting. This was not, Senegal had already passed a law to end genital cutting, but it had no effect. It was not until the religious leaders and the community leaders said so. So what does this story tell us? Our religious leaders have a unique and important place. And standing here at this podium, I am so conscious that it is our spiritual and religious leaders that must. It is our turn. It is their turn as leaders of the community to rise up. Because if they do, I was so touched by our friends from Men Against Violence and men working to end violence against women. This is so important. And just as important, imagine if every pastor, every imam, every rabbi, every customary leader in every village said, that's it. Men, come here, we're going to have a talk. This will end in our communities. It would end in our communities. Back to Jimmy Carter. When he realized this, and we had our conference, he decided to write a book. The book is coming out next month. The book is called A Call to Action: Women, Religion, Violence, and Power. And there's a second part of this story that is just as critical and important for us to think about as we go forward. What he also did was, in the introduction to the book, he told the story of the speech that Reverend Martin Luther King gave about the war in Vietnam. He said, just like Dr. King said, I cannot speak about civil rights until I speak about the violence of my own government in Vietnam. What President Carter is saying with his book is that if we're going to tackle the issue of the human rights of girls and women, we must broaden our lens. We must understand that we have accepted violence as a norm in our society. We have war to solve our foreign policy problems. We have police brutality now, which has led to the death of Oscar Grant. Vigilante violence, the death of Trayvon Martin, Kelly Thomas. We have the death penalty, the ultimate violence of the state, and we have Troy Davis, a man who was probably innocent, was put to death. Warren Hill, a man who is intellectually deficient, is sitting on death row in Georgia right now. This is the violence of our society. Our video games, our entertainment, it's all in our system here. And we must broaden our lens to begin to understand that until we normalize peace, we cannot end violence. One of our human rights defenders who came to our conference is a woman named Mussarat Kadim. She teaches the Quran in Pakistan. She's teaching religious leaders to make sure that girls are educated. Did we know about that? No, we don't. Because for us, Pakistan is about war. It's our war. But she is doing it. She has taken 92 boys out of Al-Qaeda and Taliban using the Quran. This is the way forward. But how many drones can do that? Our wars cannot do that, cannot save us from the cycle of violence. Lastly, I want to tell you about Dr. Samira, who came from Iraq. She came to tell us that at Fallujah Hospital, she's a pediatrician, and what she said, the dream of becoming a parent has become a nightmare for the women of Fallujah and the men, because heart defects that have been caused by depleted uranium munitions dropped by the US military around Fallujah has led to skyrocketing cases of heart defects. And if you saw the photographs of these deformed babies that she brought with her to the conference, you would weep. We all did. And she traveled. It took her 10 days to arrive there, only to testify to us, to say, I am here as a testimony to your war. As we contemplate new wars from this country, we must ask ourselves, is that the solution? Is that the solution to violence, more violence? When Antoinette Huff stood behind that counter in that elementary school here in Georgia, and that gunman walked into the lobby of the elementary school, loaded with weapons to shoot children, the most horrible scenario a person can encounter, what did she do? She loved him. She loved those guns out of his hands. So is violence the solution to terrorism? No. Is violence the solution to violence? No. When Jesus was asked the greatest commandment, what did he say? He said, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all laws and the prophets. Love thy neighbor as thyself. This is our work. And my call to action to all of us is to examine. Ask every religious leader that you know in your community. Give a sermon on violence. Give a sermon on the rights of girls and women, on ending domestic violence in your communities. But also give a sermon to not allow war, to stop the drone wars, to close Guantanamo, to close the detention facilities holding our sisters, our human sisters, who are without help and representation. I'm with you. In Lumpkin County, Georgia, right here, that's what we have to do. President Carter's book is coming out. This is not a plug. It's only a call to action, because at the end of the book, there are 23 actions you can take, and we'll be working together, and he'll be promoting it very, very vigorously to lead this conversation. A man, a former president, and a peacemaker who wants to be with you all in this movement. Thank you.